Hello and welcome to episode 11 of the Just Covered podcast, where we talk to advisors about their views and opinions in the intermediary space.
And today we are joined by Thora Kehoe from Smarter 365 and also James Adam from My Simple Mortgage. And we've got a really special episode because we're going to look at all things tech. So I don't know, James, do you want to get us started off as to how tech helps you in your business?
Yeah. Well, we're a mortgage intermediary, like you'd expect. So we currently use Thora's Smarter 365 and that platform over there. But we use tech for everything, right the way from sourcing clients, gathering data, processing the whole thing. We live in front of a screen as a company, whether that's a phone screen or a computer screen, a laptop screen, anything like that. So from end to end, the whole thing is now completely online, completely technology based. We don't use paper for anything in our firm at all now. We have a printer. I don't know how it works. So that's how dependent we are as a firm on technology. And it's taken us a couple of years to get there. I think people go, well, yes, obviously you work on a computer, but we had to find all those points that we weren't using technology and go, right, what are we doing there or what we're not doing there? What can we find to get in there? So we've been on that journey for a few years now.
Yeah, and as I said, when we were looking for advisors to talk about this, your name came up in many circles.
I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing.
Good thing.
Always a good thing.
Yeah. And Thora, what's your opinion on kind of tech? 'Cause obviously it's a really pressing point at the moment in the industry. There's lots of chat on it. And what would you say from being like a tech expert in the industry?
So we found from firms that we work with that there's really been three kind of key benefits that they found when they incorporate tech, just like James has had. The first is probably the fact that for most advice and brokerages, labour costs actually the most expensive part of running your brokerage. It's so manual. Up to 60% of all cost is on labour, and then up to 10 hours per application could be spent on just rekeying basically the same information into multiple systems. So one of the key benefits has been the efficiencies and kind of streamlining that process. And then the second, which is I think pretty timely with FCA Consumer Duty coming up, is about using technology to create that consistent and compliant process and being able to evidence that as well. And then the last thing, which I think a lot of firms benefit from using tech, is creating a digital experience for their clients and their customers. So being able to offer them automated tools and services or client portals, online fact finds, just a better experience of them working with their clients and the home buyers.
So in terms of the process that you had going on at the moment, or before you took the tech journey, if you like, what sort of went through your mind? What brought you to that realization that I need to actually do something? What was the tipping point?
Well, what's the best way to answer that without sounding negative? So my company's only 6 years old. So when we came in, technology, the conversation was already kicking off. The conversation was already there. And there was this understanding that we need technology. But the frustration, or not the frustration, but probably a frustration that I found owning a brokerage is I live in two worlds, right? So I live in the broker world, which I've got advisors and admins who need to process, but I've also got customers and I've got to think about how they engage. And to my mind, it felt like there's been loads of investment in the broker world. So there are some great CRMs out there. But for me, the bit I felt was missing was, how do I extend this technology to my customers in a way that they are going to accept? Because technology is only efficient if the people using it accept it. You can come up with something absolutely fantastic, but if they don't want to use it, it's And so we have some customers who are really tech aware and will happily use it. Some customers who aren't. In the same way, I've got some brokers in my firm who are like, yeah, great, but who've come and joined us because we use technology. And I've got some who others like, I hate this. Can I just have a pen and paper? And so our journey has been about trying to combine those two and get the technology, get the efficiencies of technology right the way through the customer chain. So a lot of our effort has been looking at platforms like Smarter 365 that offer that front end to the customer as well. We actually ended up building our own. We involved the guys at SmarterFit, or Ignite as it is now, to expose some affordability tools directly to customers, and we drive a lot of A lot of our processes are automated now using technology to push information and pull information to customers. So we talk about broker efficiencies, which are great. That's only half the journey. We've got to be able to offer those efficiencies to customers because they expect it. Now they want to interact in that way, in a way that's convenient for them.
And what sort of challenges have you come across along that journey?
So the big challenge for a brokerage of my size, there's 5,600 and something registered brokerage firms in the UK, right? Probably 5 or 10% of them, maybe not even that many, have the resources and the funds to go and build something really clever that does it, right? We all remember when Habito burst onto the market. I think they've had 80 something million in investment. You've got Mojo, you've got these other guys who announce these big investments and they plow all this money in. But that's one section, tiny section of this huge industry. And the bulk of us, it's like they're going, well, we want good technology, but we just can't afford it. There's some great systems out there in terms of open banking, AI, onboarding systems, decision-making protocols, all that kind of stuff. But to build a system that can interact with that and handle the data in a way that I need is really cost prohibitive. So we need firms like Smarter 365 to be able to build a platform that we can use on a SaaS basis so that we can subscribe to at a fraction of the cost. But that's the big frustration is going, I want this unique thing that feels like mine, this unique customer journey, but I haven't got £1 million to drop into a full development team over here. And so we rely on people like, at the moment, people like Smarter 365 to say, okay, we've got these broker efficiencies, but like the portals and the online stuff, how are we going to push that out to customers? So that's the question. I feel like I went way off point there.
No, and you talked about different types of people coming along the journey as well, you brokers and also customers. Yeah. Is there a certain demographic of a customer you find that's attracted to the use of tech for yourselves and also maybe for yourselves as well? Well, Thora.
Yeah, definitely. I think both sides of the coin, just like you've mentioned, there's the concept of like an early adopter. So an early adopter is somebody who they want to get their hands on anything that's new, that's exciting. They don't really care if it's not perfect yet. And we love working with early adopters because that allows us to get really quick feedback information. We can then enhance our journeys and grow. And that's great. But also we need their stories in the marketplace more generally, because as you said, innovation is expensive, right? And in our industry, we also need our partners to invest in that as well. We need the lenders to invest. We need the sourcing providers to invest. And so there needs to be a market of advisors who want to use that tech and who are willing to participate in those kind of early journeys of the tech, and then they can share what the benefits have been and encourage more usage of it. But equally, it's the same, I think, with clients and customers. Definitely, if you look at like first-time buyers and kind of the demographic there, they want to be able to do all of their admin at home on the couch or like in their commute on their way into work. And I would say that that's a general consumer expectation nowadays. You've got your bank apps and you don't go into a branch anymore often. And it's the same kind of thing. Like they would be looking for advice and advisors who can operate in that way and support them in the way that they want to receive that information.
Yeah, completely. And I think what's coming up quickly behind is the generation behind me. So I still think I'm quite young, but my kids now, I mean, they can't use cash at all. But my daughter's 9. She's got an app and a debit card. It's the Go Henry thing. It's brilliant. And she's engaging financially with technology already. So by the time she comes through, if I said to her, if I suddenly made her 36 now as a first time buyer, she'd be like, what do you mean I need to print out a bank statement? And I think one frustration from our point of view is it's great that we have it. We're definitely an early adopter firm, If an idea comes along, I'm like, yeah, give it a shot. Why not? Let's see what it's about. But we can have some efficiencies which are great, but then they stop at the next hurdle, almost to the point that it makes that early efficiency redundant. So let's say, for example, open banking, I thought this is great. This is going to be absolutely brilliant because I can, if I'm doing your mortgage application, I can jump in, I can get accurate data that you haven't messed with. You can't manipulate it. You can't put it through Photoshop. You can't hide anything. I can see everything about you. I've got all the data you need. And they go, right, we want a bank statement. I'm like, there's now no point in gathering that information. I should have just asked you for your bank statement last week and I could have done all that. And then we're posting it off.
It's almost like the weakest link in the chain, isn't it? Where it's breaking.
Can pull the whole thing apart.
Because the scenario about asking about the bank statement, so you might as well just do it, which defeats the purpose of it all, doesn't it?
As a customer-facing brand, it's got real potential to offer a great service to customer, but it's actually got real potential to damage trust. Because if I say to a customer, right, you can use this app, you can use the thumbprint, you can hand all your data over, and then I go back to them and go, by the way, can you just email me in your bank statement? They're like, what was the point in hand? Where's all that data that I've just shared with you gone? Why can't you use it? And so it's not that it's gone anywhere. It's dangerous. It's just, it's not gone anywhere. I can't hand it over to that bank because it's not in the format that bank wants it. So, but like I said, efficiency, for real efficiency, we've got to get the whole chain right the way through to conveyancing. The whole thing needs to be tied up. And so it's great that we've got some new stuff coming through, but I don't think we're anywhere near where we need to be. Yeah.
And that's a really interesting point, actually, because what we had to do with open banking was, and we've got that integrated into the journey now, and we basically had to like take all that data that you have, provide that to the advisors and give that in formats that they can then use for affordability checks and all of that good stuff. But then also go and create a physical bank statement as well. So so that we can then service the lenders in their traditional way without needing to enforce change on their side as well. So it's really interesting. It's like we can go a few steps forward in terms of technology, but you're right, until we've got an automated journey the whole way through the industry, sometimes we almost need to take a step back then and still create those paper-based outputs just to facilitate what exists today.
What a creative way, though, to just coming up with that idea itself. Absolutely great.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And like thinking back to like some of the benefits you both mentioned, you're seeing that customer efficiency, customer satisfaction. You mentioned consumer duty, getting like documentation right. But you mentioned, Thora, rewriting. So obviously we know that mortgage brokers at the moment, with all the rate pools and everything going on, can be very time short. So what do some of these efficiencies allow, either of your opinion, what do some of these tech efficiencies allow you more time to do?
I think you brought up about kind of the concept of robo-advice that had come up before. And for us at Smarter, I believe in keeping advisors at the heart of the process. And so what tech should do is actually kind of complement and support your process. And if you don't need to spend all that time literally typing out the same information, 10 times, you can be focused more on developing that relationship with your customers, understanding their needs, providing them education and information and reassurance, but also, as you said, keeping up to speed with all the changes that are happening now. There's constantly new rates, new products, new offerings out there. So that allows advisors to spend much more time kind of focusing on the advice part and less on the admin side of things.
Yeah. And that's our whole philosophy. If the technology doesn't create space for advice, it gets ditched. That's the plumb line that we use. If this doesn't make a better relationship with the customer, there's no point to it, because we're a business, we're a commercial entity at the end of the day. We have to make profit to survive. We have to be income generating. The best way to be profitable in this industry is to give good quality advice, to not get complaints, to have sticky protection that doesn't get rebrokered and re-underwritten or cancelled, all that kind of stuff. So all that comes down to the quality of the product that we put out and the quality of the service. Technology can massively improve the quality of what we do. Even little things like not retyping somebody's name wrong, from one system to the other. We've all seen it happen. The date of birth is a month out because you pressed a 6 instead of a 7. All that. If technology can get rid of that improves the quality. But then, as much as we talk about people transacting digitally, and I talk about my kids coming through, they're also coming through in the world of misinformation, in fake news and all that kind of stuff. And we will trust our apps and our phones and our technology to a point. But I think a lot of first-time buyers particularly, they'll go, do you know what, I'll take a photo, I'll send you my ID, I'll give you my thumbprint, I'll do all that, but am I doing the right thing? Because there's a lot of zeros on that loan, and they just want that person. They want to be able to pick up and go, yeah, Hazel, do you know what? Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Am I doing the right thing? You're okay. This is what you need. You're going to be fine. It's that's really reassuring that again helps drive quality of business. But then you bring in consumer duty and avoiding future foreseeable harm, and that whole concept. How can you possibly do that without getting to know the customer? So if we can reduce the admin time so that we can create more time for people to, get to know the customer, that's only going to be a beneficial thing.
Yeah, I'm interested as well when you're saying about, they still want that reassurance, because definitely everyone still has the option to go direct, don't they, if they wanted to, but they have still chosen to come and see you and get your expertise on whole of market, and potentially other products and bits and pieces you can identify as well. So in terms of that kind of trust building, do you find the tech absolutely, when it's spot on, working right, enhances that trust and allows you to then broaden your offering to that person?
I think it depends on the customer. For that, there's some really interesting research that was done on and I wish I could quote it, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. But it talks about how trust is built with a customer, and actually, if customers build trust quicker and tend to have a better relationship with customers, with companies, depending on how they put an error right. So I don't know if you've seen those stats on that. So if a company does something right first time, you'll go, okay, that was great. If something doesn't go quite right, and then that company goes to the ends of the earth to put it right and really turns it around, you go, do you know what? They're human and they made a mistake, but they will own it and they will deal with it. I am going to stay with that customer. So does technology help with that? I think it reduces the initial little frustrating mistakes, but it still comes down to the quality of that human person behind the scenes caring enough to give good advice. We still, even though we use technology in our firm, I still hire good people, honest, hardworking, diligent, caring people to give advice, even though the technology is doing the bulk of it. So does it help? Yes, to an extent, but you've still got to have trustworthy, decent, good customer service behind all the technology. Technology will just highlight where you're weak, I think, in that area.
Sounds like those original values that you've got already have got to be intact. You've got to have that as a bottom foundation within the firm.
From top to bottom, do the right thing first time, every time. It's got to be that way.
Yeah. And you were mentioning just earlier before around the elements of the journey, I think you touched yourself on protection. So how does technology itself, smarter and whatever, how does that help the protection conversation? I suppose there's exposure to the advice and the face-to-face element and all of that, but how specifically does it enhance the potential for the customer to get the right outcomes in line with consumer duty?
I think this is a real focus of firms, and particularly a lot of the networks that we work with this year in particular, because of the consumer duty. We're shining kind of like a light on that protection journey. And on our side, we've been doing a lot of research into it and looking at how we can improve that customer experience for protection advisors. I think maybe more traditionally it was seen as, certainly in some firms, as like an afterthought. And it's about bringing that into the forefront of the core journey that the customer is going to, partake in as they go through their advice journey. So some of the things that we've been looking at is, how can you facilitate gathering their needs, not just not just the mortgage protection needs, but their holistic needs of that customer. So using all the fact find information to gather that picture for them, and then displaying it in a way back to the protection advisors so that they can easily see what areas they need to zone in on, and then automatically get quotes being pulled in so that they can have these conversations with customers. It's also about creating opportunities to start having those conversations earlier in the journey, automated communications, starting to display, information over to them early on, just kind of like primers. But I really think that what we're seeing is that you should really be looking at how technology can kind of complement that process for you, rather than mandate it in any way. Just kind of support that process, complement that process. And most firms are doing the right thing anyway, so it's just about kind of helping them along and providing that consistency. So
incremental gains, really, isn't it? Just the even better if, as I like to call it. So with regards to that, I'm quite interested, you said, is it priming, did you mention there? Mm-hmm. Does a sort of behavioural science element come into it? Is it as intricate as that or not? How does that work, if anything?
Some firms are looking into that, definitely. And in fact, we launched a new feature with a partner this year, which uses segmentation and machine learning to contact clients at the right time in their journey. So they will know that, like you said, you could set some primes early on, and then at the right time as their mortgage moves through, as to when they'd be more likely to kind of engage in those conversations. And advisors are really open to it. It's landed really, really well. And I think it just kind of supports their process, especially when there's automated journeys that can help facilitate that.
And I guess it's going back to that, it's supporting that journey, because as we've mentioned, consumer duties come in, making it more kind of pressing to look at avoiding that foreseeable harm, as you mentioned, James. But what we see is the busier mortgage advisors are, the protection is the bit that gets put to the end and put on that, think, all right, I'll deal with that later. I've got, 10 rekeys to do tonight. So I guess, do you see that as technology being an integral part of actually just helping you be able to have that holistic conversation piece and actually the time?
Yeah. So we have a range of advisors in our firm. We have some who do both mortgage and protection, but our core team, we separated it. We have mortgage specialists and we have protection specialists, and they both use that technology. On the protection side, because we realised that those actually who were writing higher volumes of mortgages weren't picking up the protection, we were referring it on. And I look at these statements and go, we gave away how much in? We should have been doing that ourselves. So we brought in a protection expert, and he's absolutely, you've spoken with Tony, and he's old school, but he's a dog with a bone with it. He believes in the product. So he'll use the technology, but he's already got the belief in the product, and he's got the belief that giving people protection advice is good financial advice and holistic advice. So as a firm, we provide that complete package. But just picking up on what you said before about how technology complements it, technology is the complementary part to financial advice. It is not the core of financial advice. And I think that's where customers sometimes get a bit confused. So we provide advice, but you can go compare and get life insurance, and it amazes me that people do that, because they will go, right, well, that premium's £10, whereas the one through My Simple Mortgage is £12. But the one with My Simple Mortgage has been fully advised and recommended, and we've looked at everything there for you. Whereas the technology online that the customers have access to means they can click a couple of things and then apply for this, and they think they're insured. So again, we use technology. Online comparison sites both use technology. We use the technology to complement good financial advice. We don't use it to replace anything at all. So they've got to go together.
Yeah, definitely. Because as you said, that's twofold, isn't it? There's technology kind of aiding advisors, and then actually sometimes advisors are having to not work against it, but kind of counter it and see why their advice was worth that extra £2 a month, and try and get that customer to overcome and believe it. Sort of what with that consumer duty point, touching on that again, how do you find we can kind of aid the documentation part? So that's a big part of the advice process as well.
It is. And I mean, you're gathering so much information about a customer, and often you're kind of working with them over a number of months, right? So really, what I think you can use technology for is, once you've established what that process is and what tools you want to use, the nice thing is then you can start to automate, well, when should I be giving this information to a customer? How do I deliver it to a customer? Yes, being like empathetic, providing that reassurance, and making sure it's still kind of unique and bespoke for that customer's needs. But when you use tools and services that are built in to do that, the nice thing is that you get the paper trail and the evidence out the back of it, right? So, if you're doing that and using, like, we've got a tool, for example, that allows you to say, right, I'm going to give this information to this customer at this point in time. And not only can you track who's seen what, but you can actually ask them to go on and acknowledge that they've understood what it means as well. And so you're doing right by the customer by giving them the right information at the right time, making sure that they understand it. But you're also doing right for yourself by making sure then that you have a process that you can evidence should you ever need to say, this is exactly what happened.
We transitioned from being an AR to DA at the start of this year. And it suddenly dawned on me as the principal, I was like, okay, I've got to be able to defend my team if something comes in. And it's, we've thankfully never had a complaint, but when a customer does raise something, I didn't know this, I didn't quite understand that, we can go back to them and say, here's the evidence of, actually this was discussed with you here, and does this make sense? They go, okay, fine, and they get it. So creating that digital trail. So we use 365. We have an additional CRM as well that handles all our marketing, that has a timeline built in that logs when customers are engaging with us, either on the website or when they've clicked and read an email and all that kind of thing. And that just sits behind every customer contact. I can see everything, which date, and I use that for the advisors as well. I can go, actually, that's out of date. That appeared on the system after that, or that was done then. And we built our sales process around that. But the digital world gives me that protection as a director, that I can track everything. The other thing it does as well is, and I don't know if this is a helpful point or not, but it's turned us from a 9-to-5 company to a 24-hour company is actually one of the massive positives. And in that, customers can engage with our front door, which is our website. They can get information on what they can afford. They can get information on how much something might cost. They can open up lines of communication at a time that suits them. Because I reckon if you probably looked at I don't know, you might be able to tell me the stats on 365 when it's used, there's probably because I know you can send people your fact find to fill in. There are probably ones done at midnight, 2 a.m, because if somebody works a strange shift pattern, they can't come in and sit down in your office and do the fact find. And that's the world we live in nowadays. That for us, that's been one of the massive parts of technology, is having a platform that the customer can use at their own discretion at a time and that suits that. That's also helpful. They don't have to wait till 9 o'clock to call up and go, I can't get this to work.
That's so interesting. I guess that allows you to be quite agile with your processes as well. Because I said, if you can see when people are engaging and when they're clicking on a bit of marketing or clicking, a certain fact find element, and you can track, well, what caused them to click on further, or did they stop? And then that allows you to kind of tweak the wording or maybe try new wording.
And we track that through our website. We can see when forms drop off. Like, say, okay, there's too many questions on that form. We need to provide there's a pain point there. What can we do to do that? And so I guess it's much like, you go to the supermarket, there's a reason the milk's always at the back. They have studied that to make you walk right past everything else that's appealing. And so we're a business just the same way. We've got to get people through that journey, and we want them to talk about protection. We want to talk about home insurance. We want to talk about all this. How do we get them to the point they want to go without annoying them, but then get all these other things through there? And we can do that digitally in a really consistent way across a company. Whereas if I just rely on advisors, they might all have their own pattern, which is great, but it will be inconsistent. But actually technology gives me that ability to have a consistent approach.
So I'm hearing here, it keeps you compliant. And from a consumer duty point of view, you've got really robust documentation. It allows you as a business owner to think, right, where can I be more agile and actually create maybe a better sales journey from a commerciality point of view. But then also that customer element, it's like, how amazing is that for the customer? Because they're getting to engage with what they want to engage with at the right time for them. Mm-hmm. So it's like a win-win. And then going back to that consumer duty point of good customer outcomes, that's really, in theory, creating the ideal customer outcome, isn't it? Because it's timely, it's efficient, and it's understandable and relatable to that person at the right time.
Yeah.
And then you have the evidence off the back of it as well. So, yeah, and the MI too, because obviously so much of FCA consumer duty is about collecting that MI. Mm. And if you're just doing that over the phone or, the more traditional meetings that you used to have, you don't have any of that MI. Whereas by using tech, naturally, you can gather all of that information and you have it then if you do ever need to report on it in the future as well.
It's so important with the consumer duty coming in, as we're saying, that importance around validating the understanding. I think that's key. That's a great element to be able to do, is demonstrate through the MI as well. So you can focus and look back at the efficiencies, look at when you've changed things at certain parts of the journey where customers are engaging or where they're not engaging. I presume you've seen over the last few years an increased engagement with the platform and with the use of tech. How are you selling it to the more sort of traditional advisors, the ones that, because everyone knows that the relationship with the client is important and it's great. How do you approach that rather than pay maybe the people that are a little more, I suppose, akin to using technology?
So for us, well, I think one thing that's really important is not to dictate how they should use any of the services. So like opening the door to say, right, where can we provide efficiencies and streamline what you're already doing, perhaps, and you might be more comfortable with that. Because, yeah, not everybody is like James and wants to go to a fully kind of digital way of working right now. But the other thing that works quite well is getting other brokers to talk to brokers. So we've got clients where one in the team has really embraced our client portal, and they've built that into how they kind of open up their conversation with their clients. You know, they'll get a phone call and they say, I'm just going to send this to you. Just log in, fill it out, spend half an hour. And then they'll get an email when they've been completed. They can go on, do some pre-sourcing. Before they've even spoken to that customer, they'll come on to the next conversation and say, right, this is what I know you're looking for. This is what I can get you. And that customer is like, oh my, this is brilliant, right? So it's getting brokers to explain how they use tech and their benefits and what they're seeing to other brokers who might be a little bit more reluctant to use it. Like that really is really encouraging and reassuring for them. But yeah, I think adding just a little bit in at a time is also a good way. You don't need to go fully digital from the get-go.
You can dip your toe in.
Exactly.
And test it as you go along.
Yeah, I think we talk about creating unique customer journeys, and one of the one of the things I love about technology is as it develops, it will give each customer the ability to navigate their own journey through technology, or navigate their own way through a mortgage application. So your mortgage application process might look completely different to yours, and it looks completely different to yours because you might be a first-time buyer, home mover, portfolio landlord, or and there's a myriad, there's thousands of different. But in the same way, brokers are the same. And actually, one of the beautiful things about our industry is that we've got such a rich diversity of people and characters in our industry that can relate to people in different ways. So Kelly is an absolute, she's one of our absolute superstar advisors. She will relate to people in a way that I just never will. Anna's the same. Tony's the same. So it's as people engage with the platform and the technology differently, brokers need to be responsive to that. And what's interesting is those who have fully embraced technology within our firm use it all the time and it rarely goes wrong. Those who their default might be, I don't like technology, tend to be the ones who go, this isn't working, that isn't working. And therefore their customers tend to go, this isn't working, that isn't working. So it's, as we talk about, technology has got to connect across the chain. It's got to connect through the broker's brain as well at the same time. And so nobody ever wants to push a broker out, and but the point I originally made, it's got to support that advice. It's got to support the human squishy bit at the end of the chain that can give human advice.
So I'm sensing mindset's a big part of it as well.
Massive.
The importance of the advisor, where they are from that headspace perspective and use of technology and
the customer as well. I keep talking about going back to the customer because that's my most valuable thing is the customer. If the customer journey works and the brokers can have good efficiencies in the background, then that's perfect. If one doesn't work, it's off balance. But if we can get both to work harmoniously, that's the sweet spot.
Excellent. So from, I suppose, protection perspective, you've got other opportunities. GI, I think in consumer duty, you've got other needs that come along, pensions, investment, all that type of stuff. How can tech help us with regards to that? How do we see the future with regards to those types of things, in ensuring that there's holistic advice out there? And I know a lot of it will involve referral partners and all that type of thing. How can that help us?
Yeah, I think the vision kind of needs to be towards creating an integrated kind of ecosystem of information with the client, and obviously putting client consent at the heart of that as well. But yeah, you should be able to share information much more easier. And if you've got experts, like you said, you're working with an expert in one area, or you've got referral partners that you want to use because they're experts, there should be a nice, easy way for you to exchange that information. And particularly all those kind of paper-based things that we ask people to do, the bank statements, the IDV, the credit reports, all of that. There needs to be a way that we can share that information across multiple parties. Conveyancers, our providers, our lenders as well. And once we can create that kind of marketplace using our integrations that we've already started to develop, I think that's really going to allow people to then share information very easily and get more holistic advice, like you said.
So when one of our advisors who just does mortgage, we have a set point in the process at which point that will then go over to the protection advisor. 365 just hands the whole thing over. No one's printing off a fact find and passing it across the desk. It just, okay, Tony, it's now on your desk. And there's all the information along with all the sourcing information, everything that's been, the whole journey that's been caught in evidence then gets transferred over. But we also use technology get to talk to the customer about it. So there's these different touch points within our system that emails the customer or can send a message saying, don't forget, we're going to talk about this. And I told you we're going to talk about this. And then we're going to talk about, by the way, on Tuesday, we are talking about this. And people, they love it. But consent is the other one as well. I'll probably get eyebrows being raised when I say this, but we don't do GI as a firm. Like, we just don't, it's not something we do. We spoke with the advisors and we spoke to the team. We didn't feel it was an area that we were experts in. There's a lot of paperwork involved in it for what, compared to the value of the other transactions we were doing. So we hand over to just another firm in our town where really great, they're insurance specialists and they're really good. We have to get consent to do that. Our system now does that with the thumbprints. They get an email, are you happy? Thumbprint on there, logged, it's time dated, and then the data's passed over to the insurance broker. So when the insurance broker then picks up that lead, they're not picking up, oh, do you want insurance? They're picking up going, hi Hazel, I see you're buying 22 clear loan, it's valued at 250,000. Here's the insurance that you're going to need. And the sales, we use technology to drive all of that, both from a consent point of view, but a customer efficiency point of view.
That's so seamless, isn't it? Yeah, and I guess it means there's not the same. I mean, there'll be certain bits that maybe verbally have to be repeated from a compliance point of view, but you're not having to ask that customer. You could say, oh, and you said this to my colleagues, that's still correct. So, you're not having to actually get that customer to go through the whole spiel 3 times, this mortgage broker, then protection, then the GI. And they're actually, what I'm hearing here is each stage of the process, they're speaking to someone who is a specialist in those areas.
Yeah. But it's right the way through the chain for us. So if somebody calls up, and this is where the whole concept of a CRM, I think, originated. Our admin team, they pick up the phone and they say, oh, hi Wayne, yeah, how you doing? And they can just straight off the bat know who they're talking to, and they've got the information in front of them, rather than going, oh yeah, I'll just have to get Anna to call you back because I don't know. It's that sort of stuff. All those little things that you wouldn't think are a big thing are absolutely massive in terms of building that trust and that relationship.
If you put that in with the wider expectation for what customers see in other industries, i.e. the thumbprint, that's galvanising that trust there. Bang on, isn't it? You're thinking, right, I'm dealing with a proper outfit here because it's gone across. They know what I'm talking about. They're confirming, as Hazel's already said, rather than going, what you've got this, or I can't read their writing. It's like, they know.
But I think it's using technology they understand as well, technology that already exists. If we develop something completely new and radical, people might go, I don't know what that is, but we use WhatsApp, and we have WhatsApp as our chat function on our website. So we don't have a chatbot on the website. We have WhatsApp that goes to, it's encrypted, it's safe, but everybody's got WhatsApp on their phone already. And so we're just opening up the channels that are already out there to use it. People expect to WhatsApp. I'm in so many WhatsApp groups. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like right from my son's football team to I play in a band, we're all in a WhatsApp group. Then there's the friends and family. Everything is done by WhatsApp. It stands to reason that customers will probably do the same. And so it's finding that technology that customers are already familiar with and not trying to say, hey, you need to do this thing that requires you to stand on one leg and all that. It's already there.
But as you said, like then that helps actually develop your brand as well, because it does suggest that kind of like premium experience that you're really at the forefront, and it develops that trust, like you're mentioning there, that if you're using that kind of technology, then this is an outfit that really they really have invested and are going to give better advice as well because they kind of trust it. And yeah, it makes sense. And the other good thing with that as well is that once you have filled out all of that information once, the CRM's never going to ask you for that again. So the only thing you ever need to look at then is if anything has changed. The next time you come to do your PT or a remortgage or a protection review, it's now so much easier because you already know so much about the customer. So they're more likely to then come back to you again and continue that relationship with your company. So
on our system, we built in particularly for remortgages, we built in it's just an automated email and then a message that says, hey, it goes out 180 days before the product end date. And on there is a form they can launch. There's 4 questions. And it's, are there any changes to your circumstances? Do you need to borrow any more? Can't remember what the other ones are. A couple of questions. But then they just do that on the phone. It's all optimized for mobile, and that then comes back in. That's then a hot lead for our advisors. Okay, so the customer has gone, oh, I didn't even realize it was up. Great, they're proactive, they're on it. I've answered 4 simple questions, and we can now start to quote that customer straight away. So we bring up the old, the lead comes in, bring up the fact find. They've said there's no changes, the circumstances, quick phone call to say, I found you this product. You're starting advice right at the very start, but it's all come through them recognising, trusting the technology they've had in hand. It's all been done through a mobile phone. That has helped our retention rate massively.
Because that's what I was wanting to ask, is that retention piece. Because I guess if you've got someone saying, oh yeah, I do want to borrow more, you can then take the time to start setting their expectations as well of like costings and what they maybe need to put aside and what other budgets need to think about. So you're being really proactive with that conversation rather than reactive.
The value of a broker is in the ability to give good advice as soon as possible. So the sooner I can get to a conversation about advice where I'm solving the customer's problem, the more likely that customer is to transact with us and the more likely they are to build trust and therefore stay with us. So if I can gather the information I need to give you accurate advice early on, then that first conversation is going to be really, really helpful. So like with 365, get them to fill out that, send out that fact find so that when the advisor picks up, they're not saying, Thora, what is it you're looking at doing? We're picking up the phone saying, hey, I can see what you're looking to do and I've got a solution for you. Let's talk about the implications of that. Let's answer your questions. If that's your first conversation, the customer isn't going to bother looking anywhere else, and then you've built trust straight away. So
really clever.
Yeah, so that's the value add of a broker, that is the advice. But the quicker we get to that, that's the value add of technology.
No, I totally agree. I'm just interested to sort of delve a little bit deeper on the side of, you've mentioned PTs, you've also mentioned the element where you've got WhatsApp, and you might put a few questions out on whether circumstances change. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you did mention about maybe giving some options. Has that changed now? Because I appreciate they're not options that are binding, if you like, but has that changed, particularly with cost of living crisis, where you've got people that have been used to low interest rates, they're coming off and potentially going on to quite a lot higher? Have you had to change the way you do that and how much information you give up front or not?
We've changed our language and our communication. You know, it's you know, the message used to be, hey, let's go and get you the best possible rate out there. Now the message is, hey, this might sting a little bit, and so don't just go and do what your bank does, because actually there might be a better option for you. So the marketing approach is not just about the rate; it's about we're the friend in a crisis, you know. And so being able to reach them with that message first, because in a crisis, and we talk about mental health, you know, as a society a lot more, which is great, and we talk about being that friend that reaches out. We can financially, people are in a crisis right now because their mortgage payment's going to go up by £500-600 a month. If you just sit back as a brokerage and go and wait for them to call, and there's a month to go before that deal ends, and you've got 30 days to prepare for the fact that payment's going up, that's not great. But if I contact you 180 days beforehand and go, listen, you've been paying 1.25% for the past 3 years, 4 years, and that's great. The rate is going to be slightly high, but let's talk about this now. Let's get you ready for what happens in 6 months' time. Let's talk about your circumstances. Let's, you know, have you had kids? All that sort of stuff. Where else can we help try and save you money? And so it's that proactive pushing out first into their situation, and technology just does all that for us. We don't have to, you know, the first of every month, that's when a lot of our automated emails go out, and I get a report on my phone that pings up who's opened what. So I know exactly which customers have engaged, how they're engaging, what products they want, what appointments are now booked in for the advisors. And so I think that's where we've been really good on retention, is we've just been really proactive. And it's not this arduous thing where we're printing off a form and then calling all the customers. The technology's doing it all for us.
And is there ability sort of almost to look at propensity to take advice? So who's engaged with what email, who's opened what, where they've got to, and then where that's end up with further advice, maybe from a mortgage perspective and protection and other products as well? Do you sort of see where I'm going with that?
Yeah, you can start to look at things like conversion rates and how well those strategies are kind of playing with your conversion rates. And then there's other tools as well that you can look at as well. So obviously rates are going up, but there's also a positive story sometimes there too. You know, your equity is going up as well, and your home valuations could have gone up. Maybe there's equity options that you can tap into. And so, you know, we've got the automated remortgage triggers, like you mentioned, but there's also automated home valuations that we'll send out. So that keeps your brand and your name at the forefront of customers. There's home buyer app tools as well that you can have on your phone, and that gives, you know, your clients your contact information there. So whenever they need to contact you, if they do, you know, read something in the newspaper and it's concerning, they've got that information there that they can always reach out. And it comes alongside things like reminders of when their remortgage is going to crop up and what their current home valuation is now. So I think it's about balancing that information, but also creating those kind of automated touch points so that by the time it gets to that point, you already have your brand at the forefront for them, and they know that they're going to reach out to you for any information that they need.
And they know where everything's going. They've been signposted by the system, haven't they? In terms of the old school way of doing it, I suppose, would be A to Z or January to December, wouldn't it? And going through things via a manual process. This way, it's doing it all for you. So when you get to those final conversations, how are you approaching? How is it going with regards to protection at the moment? How are you finding that?
I mean, our protection conversion rate's has gone way up this past 18 months, but that's because we've had a specialist in who flies the flag for that throughout the firm. So that's been a massive part of it. But it's because we're using these automated touch points. It never leaves the front line of the conversation. It's not like this thing that gets forgotten about and gets brought up later. It's when their mortgage goes in, they get hit with an email that says, congratulations, your mortgage application is now underway. It's with your payment will be this, but don't forget we're going to be in touch to speak about and indicative terms and all that kind of thing. So it's for us, protection has really picked up both through having an expert in house to drive it, but then I get the words and phrases from him to feed into our technology. Like, what kind of language are we using here, Tony? And we feed that in, and then that really helps.
And that gives a really consistent personal brand then as well, because if you're using Tony's language and then it's coming through to them by the time you see him, it's very consistent. And it's very clever, isn't it, the way that system's working. And I guess that just from a customer point of view, feel very safe, with all of that, wouldn't you?
The thing that I live in fear of as a director is the phone ringing and somebody saying, my husband's passed away and I need to make a claim on my life insurance. How can you help? And I look through and I go, well, we did the mortgage. We never followed up on the protection. That would be horrific if that happened. The technology just stops that happening. It pings us saying, is this done? Is this done? So that's for me as a director. Talk about value add of technology. I sleep at night because I know that we're not going to miss that.
Mm-hmm. So if any advisors are listening to this then and they're thinking, right, I'm loving what I hear, but I've got no idea where to start, what would you say is the starting point for kind of maybe, how do they get into looking at technology within their business?
I think if you're looking for a new kind of tech provider, there's some kind of things you should kind of consider when you're out there looking at what's available. The first one is find something that is bespoke to your industry. Look for a tech partner that's got integrations with sourcing providers, with lenders. They've got all those relationships with the networks and clubs because they actually understand your bespoke needs as a mortgage or protection advisor. And what that means is you're going to be able to get something out of the box that's going to work for you, and it's going to require far less customization and far less cost to invest in. So that would be number one. The second thing is make sure you're going for something that allows you that flexibility. We've been saying today about how it should kind of complement and support your current process. So yes, you want to get all those efficiencies and streamline your business, but you want to be able to do it your way and keep that personal touch. So make sure that something isn't going to be dictated for you. You can kind of use whatever tools or services make the most sense. And then I would also say tech is always going to evolve and change, and there's going to be new things, new services, new features coming on the market all the time. So make sure that you take a look at what they've done over the last, say, 3 years. Have they integrated new services? Have they been evolving? Do they regularly release new changes, right? Because you want to make sure that whatever you're partnering with is going to kind of see you out the next 5 years, 10 years, right? That aligns with that vision of where you want to get to eventually. And then there's one thing that has come up in our industry, which is unfortunately, it's this kind of concept of a data prisoner that's happened. So essentially, that's where firms are being held to CRMs through really complicated or expensive ways of getting their data out. And we did a survey on this last year, and we found about just under 1 in 5 had actually been held data prisoners in the past. And some firms reporting having to pay, $10,000, $20,000 in fees just to get their data out of a system. So ask those questions up front. Make sure that they're going to give you your data back in a human readable format and in a timely fashion and without any extra cost. Just so you know what you're getting into before you ever sign up for a new provider.
I wouldn't have even thought of that. at all. So I
So
definitely
useful.
learned something new. I was really useful. I didn't know a data prisoner was a thing until just now. So
Yeah, we moved from one
Yeah.
CRM over to 365, and the company were really helpful. But it was something I hadn't even thought about. I was like, oh wow, there's hundreds of mortgages a year over 6 years. Like, there's a lot of data, and then getting all that back for us went really well. But we happened to have a helpful person on the end of the phone at either end, and they spoke to each other and worked it out. But I hadn't even thought of that point.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, because you've got to go in with your eyes wide open, haven't you? And
Yeah.
so thank you for giving those points. I wouldn't even have thought of them.
I think for brokers who are looking at it from our point of view, if there are some areas that you can't control. So if you're in AR, the network will choose the system you're on, and I think particularly I felt that when we were in AR was that I can't do what I really want to do. So we had to look at what we can do. And you can make lots of little changes, even if you have to use a particular CRM, and you might have a great system with your network, and there are some great systems out there. But we looked at the other stuff that we can do at the front end. So adding WhatsApp or a simple chatbot, stuff they're not they're not expensive. They're quite cost effective to do. The other thing I'd say to a lot of brokers is don't get stressed about it, because technology does filter through actually. So you might not be able to afford the latest thing now. We aren't a massive firm. We don't have a huge budget, but I allocate a lot of my time to look at it. So that's where we're fortunate as a firm. So I spend a lot of my time looking at what's out there, and I drive hard at looking at what is out there that's cost effective. So before we moved to 365 and we wanted to do some other things, I cobbled together. I found one system that did that really well and one system that did that really well. And then I plugged them all in. I mean, I kind of had this Frankenstein system that forms from there and chatbots from there and WhatsApp and all that kind of thing. So if you can't control the big thing that you're on, you can control the small things that you're on. And then just go speak to other brokers. I love this idea where you got brokers speaking to each other. I've never met a competitive person. I've never come across anyone in the industry who goes, no, I'm not telling you what I do. I'll happily tell people which programs we use, because there's enough pie to go around, So speak to other brokers who are doing things. I'm happy for anyone to contact me and go, hey, how do you get your terms of business accepted by a customer with a thumbprint? That's dead easy to do. So there's loads of little things like that. It's just
interesting that we said that at the previous podcast we did, previous episode, about brokers are willing to share what they do.
There's so much great quality advice out there. My passion for this industry is that we use technology to expose and open up the years of quality advice that is hidden within our world. So there are brokers out there who've been advising for 20 years, 30 years, who are just superb. They can just do mortgage advice really well. Technology shouldn't be a barrier to them providing that service to people. But I think sometimes people get intimidated by it and they tend to shy away. And I've heard of people going, I can't keep up with the technology, and they've retired. What a waste of, what a shame to lose that from our industry. It doesn't have to be complex. I know the phrase API. I do not know how an API works. I've heard of a webhook. I do not know what a webhook does, but I'm passionate about technology, and I will work with those people who understand those things to make sure that we give a good quality platform to our customers.
And that's why we, again, saying it on the previous episode, that's why we wanted this podcast, because there are so many amazing things that advisors are doing across the industry, but you don't know what you don't know. And actually, that's the whole purpose of this, is to give people like yourself a platform to actually share that kind of peer-to-peer coaching advice. And we've had people on here who have been 40 years in the industry, people that have been a couple of years in the industry, but all had really unique stories to share and best practice that they've learned, along that way. So you're completely right. Regardless of length of time, there's amazing talent across the pool, isn't it? And it's bringing that all together. So thank you for being part of it.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think everyone wants to be generally the best they can be. Well, technology is now coming along which can enable them to do that. So to have an advisor that's left the industry for that because they weren't so sure about technology is an absolute travesty, isn't it? Because that person can continue being brilliant, but even better if I mentioned earlier on. Fantastic stuff.
Exactly. And you shouldn't need to know what an API is or what an webhook is, right? Like, that's our job. So that's why we work really closely with a lot of advisors to understand and to really just focus on the benefits that they're going to get. So we're there to figure out the how and what happens behind the scenes, but understanding the why and what we can do to make it better is really where we want to bring advisors in and make sure that we're delivering that. And then it should be, good tech really should be as easy as, okay, you just click this button and then it works, right? It shouldn't require somebody to need to be overly passionate about it, right? Once they understand the benefits that they're going to get out of it.
We don't want mortgage firms filled with technical experts, and we don't want technical firms filled with mortgage advisors. We want mortgage and protection advisors to spend more time with their customers doing what they're made to do, what they're really good at. And so that we work closely with the guys at 365, and we've had chats about, we've given feedback about what we want to change, what we want to see. And I know Tony's been talking to you about the protection process of that. And then we leave all that to them. We're like, hey, it'd be great if you could do this. And you go, right, we'll add it to the list. I don't know how they're going to do it. But then when it happens, you're like, that's awesome.
Sounds like a great partnership.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, no, that's exciting, isn't it? And I'm looking forward to seeing what the future holds for all your new tech. I'm sure that you'll get coming in the future if you keep building on it, and then sort of all the amazing things that Smarter 365 are doing for the industry as well. If you each had one tip, say if an advisor's listening, you were to share one quick tip for them to take away, what would it be?
I would say be open-minded and try something new. I really do think that the more people that are willing to try the new innovations that we have and the new services that we have, the more investment that we're going to get. So I would say just go and try something new, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
I would say make sure you know who you are, what's your identity, and then find the technology to complement that. Don't change who you are for the technology, because the technology to complement you is out there.
That's two brilliant bits of advice. Thank you so much. What an interesting episode, something completely new. And I hope everybody's enjoyed it.
Absolutely brilliant. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.